Okay, for this week's Flipped Classroom for Grammar, we're going to be looking at complete sentences and one of the two main errors that can occur with complete sentences. So please remember that when you see the pencil in the corner, you're going to need to take notes. That pencil is going to be on almost every slide of this PowerPoint because it's a short one, so you're going to need to take a lot of notes. So for complete sentences, you have three things to make it complete. And those three things are 1, a subject, 2, a verb, and 3, it needs to express a complete thought. So subject and verb is something that we've looked at in the past PowerPoint, so that's going to be a review. So subject, if you remember, is the person, place, thing, or idea that is doing the verb or is being something. The verb, if you remember, is the word that expresses the action or the state of being, like jump or was or something like that. The new idea, though, is that the complete sentence needs to express a complete thought. So that's the new idea that we're going to be looking at in this PowerPoint, and so we'll be looking at that in a little bit more depth as we go on. So complete sentences need to have a subject, a verb, and express a complete thought. So when you are missing one of those things, it creates something. So what happens when one of those three things is missing? You get one of the most common errors that I've seen in your writing, which is a fragment. So when a subject, verb, or complete thought is missing, you have a fragment, which is an incomplete sentence, and it's very common in your writing. So we're going to be looking at specifically what it looks like when you're missing the subject, what it looks like when you're missing the verb, and what it looks like when you do not have a complete thought. So let's go and look at what it looks like when you are missing the subject. So, fragments when you're missing the subject, example number 1. With her puppy under her arm. That is a fragment. It is missing the subject. So we're going to look at how to correct that. So here's correction number 1. Her puppy was under her arm. So here in correction, we added the subject, her puppy, because we know now that the puppy was under the arm and it actually has a subject. The first example, with her puppy under her arm, does not have a subject because it starts with with. Remember, subjects will not come in a prepositional phrase. So, correction, her puppy was under her arm, taking away the with. Okay, fragment example number 2. By paying too much attention to chatting and Facebook can make a student fail. Fragment, no subject. So let's look at the correction. Paying too much attention to chatting and Facebook can make a student fail. So in this correction, we again took away the prepositional phrase by. Remember, prepositional phrases will not be part of the subject. So when we take away the by, we now see that paying too much attention to chatting and Facebook is the subject because there's no prepositional phrase, and doing those things can make the student fail. So, example number 3. No, I'm sorry. A second correction, the way that you can do it is by adding a subject to the beginning. So a student can fail by paying too much attention to chatting and Facebook. By rearranging the sentence, you can fix it, the fragment in that way as well. So you can either take away the prepositional phrase or rearrange it. So a student can fail by paying too much attention to chatting and Facebook. Okay, so that's fragments with no subject. We're now going to move on to fragments with no main verb. Okay, fragments with no main verb, again, they're not going to have the verb. So here's an example. A movie with love and war. So there is a subject here, but there's no verb at all. So here is a correction for it. It was a movie with love and war. So we can see that the was It was is what we added, and the was becomes the verb. So it is now a complete thought. It's a complete sentence with a main verb. Second example, clothes thrown everywhere. So this one's a little bit tricky because there is a verb in it, but it's not a main verb. So thrown is a verb, but it's not complete. So looking at the correction, we see that if you add a were, it becomes a main verb. So clothes were thrown everywhere. There's another way to correct it. You can add a verb in the beginning and a subject as well. So they saw clothes thrown everywhere. You can see that you need to have that main verb. Okay. Third example, a record of high grades in service in 9th grade. No verb. So here's correction. First correction, there's two different ones. So you can add, like we saw in the second correction of example number 2, the subject and the verb in the beginning. She had a record of high grades in service in 9th grade. So that's one way to do it. The second way to do it is by adding the verb into the sentence. So a record of high grades in service began in 9th grade. So you can do it one of two ways. Okay. Again, if you have questions on this, please write your questions down, email me, or ask me during class. So we're moving on to the third way that you can have a fragment, and that's expressing a complete thought. But before we move on to looking at errors, we're going to look at what it looks like or what it means to express a complete thought. So here's an example that I found that I thought expressed pretty well what a complete thought was. So I'm going to read it to you. What's an incomplete sentence? It's the moment in the television show just before the last commercial. You know what I mean. The hero slowly edges the door open a few inches, peeks in, gasps, and fade to dancing detergent bottle. You were planning to change the channel, but instead you waited to see if the villain's cobra is going to bite the hero's nose. You haven't gotten to the end. You don't know what's happening. So basically, you don't know the whole story. You don't know everything in the situation. It's not complete. A complete sentence, then, is the opposite of that moment in a television show. You have gotten to the end and you do know what's happening. In other words, a complete sentence must express a complete thought. So incomplete sentences, you don't know everything. It leaves you with unanswerable questions. Complete sentences expresses that complete thought. So it seems pretty self-explanatory. It seems pretty easy, but there can be times when it tricks you. One thing that I've seen a lot is that students will see a short sentence and assume that it is a fragment or not a complete thought because it's short. Or they'll see a really long sentence and they'll be like, oh, it's long, it has to be a complete thought. But it's not necessarily true. And here are two examples. So she ran, very short sentence, but it is a complete thought. It has a subject and a verb and it expresses that complete thought. Before I left school is longer. It does have a subject and it does have a verb, but is not a complete thought, so it's not a complete sentence. We don't know what happened before that person left school. It leaves us questioning. What happened before? Why are you saying before and not answering it? So you have to think and be careful with this. So we're going to look at some examples. Okay. Fragments. Here's examples of fragments not expressing complete thoughts. So example 1, such as running, lifting weights, and jumping rope. So here's the correction. She loves exercises such as running, lifting weights, and jumping rope. This is an error that I see a lot in your writing. If you have an example, for example, or such as, it has to be connected, or it has to have that subject and verb in the sentence. It can't just be on its own. So I see this example of a fragment a lot in your writing. So second example, leaving the class before the teacher dismissed her. Now this one can be corrected in two ways. A lot of these can be fixed in more than one way. These are just some examples. So one way that you could fix it is by letting us know what happened. So she received a detention for leaving the class before the teacher dismissed her. You can put it in the beginning, and it completes the thought. We know what happened because she left the class before the teacher dismissed her. Same thing with the second correction. Leaving the class before the teacher dismissed her was how she received detention. Again, it tells us what about leaving class before the teacher dismissed her. It lets us know the consequences of that, and it completes the thought. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to look at some examples. They're on your sheet. What I'd like you to do is to pause the video here and to try them before I give you the answers. See how you do. Okay, so let's look at the first example. Despite the fact that my brothers and father are members of my family. That is not a complete sentence. It is a fragment. Okay? Second one, run. That is a complete sentence. It is correct. In this example, again, it's short, but the you, which is the subject, is implied, and so it has the subject, you, it has the verb, run, and it's a complete thought, so it is a complete sentence. Okay, third example. Taylor loves cats and baking. That is a complete thought, and it's a complete sentence. So that is a good sentence, not a fragment. Number 4, when I go to the movies with my friends, that is a fragment. It is not a complete thought. We don't know what happens when this person goes to the movies with his or her friends. So it's not a complete thought or a complete sentence, and it's a fragment. Okay, last one. If you want to go with me. That is a fragment. It is not a complete thought. We don't know what will happen or what this person has to do if he or she wants to go with this other person. So it is a fragment. Okay, so remember, if you have questions, email me or ask me in class. The exercises that I put online are also going to really help you, so work through those, and yeah, that's it.